Welcome to the IDBM Impact Gala, the final event to showcase the work students have achieved as part of the 6-month IDBM Industry Project course. My name is Lucia Llerena, and I'll be the host for this exciting event, which we are covering directly from the beautiful Clarion Hotel. As you know, this year has been really tough, working mostly online, but working through it, I think I can speak from all the teams involved when I say that we have learned adaptability and resilience, which is why the theme for today's event is metamorphosis, which is defined as a process of change and transformation. What started out as an extraordinary challenge for all of us ended up being an exciting opportunity to create transformation across industries. So, just to explain a little bit about how this event will be evolving is that, okay, first we're going to have our outstanding IDBM program director, Niina Nurmi, to give the opening speech for this event. Then we're going to have our 2 guest speakers, which is Mikko Mäntylä and Noel Joyce. And finally, we're going to proceed to what we have all been waiting for the last 6 months. The final presentation of each team in the industry project course. It's going to be such an exciting day. But before we move on to the next part, in a way I can help you calm your nerves, I want to tell you that the lovely entertainment team took care of you, and we included in the last page of your course book a super fun bingo. So we encourage you to check it out, and each time you notice something that it's in the fields, mark it down. It's going to be super fun. And having all that said, please welcome our IDBM Programs Director, Niina Nurmi. Niina, the stage is yours.
Welcome from my part, from the whole faculty's part, to this legendary IDBM Impact Gala 2021. The past year and a half have made it even more clear how rapidly the world is changing on multiple levels. The societal environment where organizations do business is becoming more and more complex, and organizations and individual workers need to learn how to adapt to it. The key drivers of these changes are new technology, globalizing and circular economy, as well as sustainability issues that affect on everything that we do in the future. At the societal level, inequality between different groups of people is growing alarmingly. For example, between those who have and who don't have work. How might we help those without work to find purpose and identity and to contribute to the society in alternative ways? This has been one of our design challenges in this year's IDBM industry projects. Organizations are adapting to these macro level changes by modifying their structural designs. In the old world, organizations tended to be hierarchical, and managerial power was based on positions and control. In the future, however, organizations need to be more agile and flexible, and therefore their structures are becoming more flat. Expertise instead of hierarchical positions is becoming the main source of power for individuals. Now, the so-called hard skills are hygiene factors that you need to have for contributing to transdisciplinary collaborations, but soft skills, such as leadership, creativity, and emotional intelligence are now the ones that differentiate the most successful experts from others. While we are learning to utilize new technology, for example, robots, as tools in our everyday lives, this change shouldn't be applied without thinking. What tasks can we share with them? Whose ethics do they entail? Also, the ethical implications of using big data need to be better understood. What does the data mean? What can and should we do about it? And what are the implications for the society, clients, and your employees? A couple of IDBM teams have been thinking about these topics in their industry projects this year. For individual workers, these environmental and organizational challenges call for a big mindset change. Taking agency for your own working life, having a clear vision what you want and need to learn now during your formal education and after that in the life-wide learning. We also need to develop a more open mindset to tolerate uncertainty that can sometimes be overwhelming or even scary. In this challenge, leaders have an important role in building a work environment and culture that enables psychological safety and peace for employees to work creatively and experiment possible solutions, even without clear vision of the future. And even though we are not fortune tellers and the vision of the future might not be clear, successful leaders of the future help discovering the purpose, a bigger cause of the organization for making a meaningful impact for the society. Leaders need to let go of control and empower employees to generate and execute bold ideas to make an impact. Creativity is what keeps organizations ahead in the marketplace, and leaders have an important role in fostering that creativity. Employees who are empowered to find the best ways of working for themselves typically drive the boldest innovations. Knowing what is okay to do helps them to think differently for the better cause. Employees who have the encouragement and creative freedom are also generally more fulfilled, more productive, and resilient. Trusting organizational culture supports exploration without criticism. Things might go wrong, you might fail, but people need to know that it's okay. All these skills we have been practicing during the IDBM Capstone Industry Project course. And today we will see short presentations of the outcomes of our 11 impactful projects. And I would like to thank all our partners, all the organizations who have provided us with these challenges, all students, our fabulous, creative and bold students who have been tackling these challenges during the past 6 months, our mentors who have been helping the student teams to succeed, and all our other faculty members who have been helping all this happen in the background. So from now on, I would like to just welcome you to enjoy the ride today.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Niina. Those were very inspiring words. And now moving on onto the guest speakers. Our first guest speaker is Mikko Mäntylä with his keynote, How to Create Progress. Mikko, he's the president of SLUSH, a global student-run movement on a mission to create and to help founders that want to change the world. Lovely. And in his role, Mikko looks after SLUSH core audiences, the startups and the investors, as well as the content efforts by the media brand Soaked by SLUSH. And in his free time, well, Mikko is just like one of us, and he enjoys hiking, all the flavors of winter sports, and playing chess. So, Mikko, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. Let me just grab my slides out. Here we go, and put a timer on. Can you see my slides all right?
Yes, Mikko.
Perfect. So let's get going. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm still technically a third-year student myself, so I sympathize with sort of part of life you're in. And yeah, today I thought I'd speak to you for 15 minutes about how to create progress. And let's start with a question to all of you. So in your mind, draw a graph of life expectancy in the developed world, so in the sort of rich world, between 1900 and 2020. Like, does it look linear? Does it look exponential? Or does it look sort of more, logarithmic? Does it sort of converge to some, future maximum value? I hope you've all drawn that graph, and let's see what it sort of actually looks like. So this is the United States. We all know that the United States healthcare system has its own sort of particularities, but it's certainly a good sort of indicator of how life expectancy in the developed world has developed since 1880. And if you look at it, it's not exponential. In fact, it's not even linear sort of after 1950 or so. It looks like it's converging towards some maximum value. And I think the first takeaway here is, life expectancy is not a sort of first order measure of what human progress is, but it's certainly like a good sort of second order measure of all our efforts in sort of creating progress in the world. And, just looking at life expectancy, like the rate of human progress is not constant. It's not sort of one linear rise towards some sort of, infinite value. Between sort of, the year 0 and the year sort of 1800 before the Industrial Revolution, it was essentially like, constant or sort of changing very marginally. And then, something happened, it started rising quickly. And now there's reason to think that, we aren't making as much progress as we sort of once used to. So that seems like sort of an important finding. Now, if we compare this to healthcare spending in the US, again, taking sort of into account the particularities of their sort of, messed up healthcare system, this is, this healthcare spending as a percentage of GDP, so a relative measure. And, it's gone up sort of from around 4% in 1930 to, 18% or something like that today. So, not only are we sort of not making as much progress as before, we're actually, investing sort of 4.5 times more, or the US is investing 4.5 times more for that sort of decreasing rate of progress. So that's quite worrying, right? Here's another measure. It's difficult to measure productivity directly, but sort of labor productivity growth, so this is a sort of relative metric, is a pretty good way of doing that. And, there are disagreements as the exact sort of way to measure this is or what the exact level is, but I think the sort of trend line is everything in all of the research I've seen is similar. So whether we look at the sort of the EU or at the United States, it looks like productivity growth was once sort of at sort of 3% in the US pretty constantly. It was around 5% in the biggest European countries, and now today it's sort of below 1%. So again, we're not sort of changing the world as quickly as we used to. And ultimately, whatever the sort of absolute level at which we're making progress is, you know, what it kind of means is how quickly can we get ourselves out of sort of the mess we've created in the world. So there, you know, there are huge issues that we need to solve, like, you know, climate change being maybe the most obvious example, you know, global pandemics being another rather sort of current one. And, you know, progress is basically a measure of can we do these things in sort of 50 years, or can we do them in 75 years, or, you know, 150 years. So, you know, whatever the absolute rate is, it's, you know, really great to understand how we can kind of increase it. So yeah. And, you know, there's probably, you know, two observations or like two hypotheses you can put forth for, you know, why this is the case. You can argue that this is intrinsic, like it's got intrinsically harder, like every year it gets intrinsically harder to move the world forward. Like every year, you know, it takes more and more scientists, so it takes more and more money, it takes more and more time to cure the sort of, you know, next new disease that is sort of capping human life expectancy. And, you know, it's probably some of that is true. Like in 1920, you could win the sort of Nobel Prize of Physics, you know, in a lab in Cambridge if you sort of worked alone for 6 months. You know, today it may take sort of 20 years in CERN for a few thousand scientists. So maybe, you know, some part of that is actually true. But, you know, there's also like a lot of suggestive evidence or certainly like reason to believe that not all of it may be intrinsic, that it might actually be like the fault may lie in our institutions, that we've set ourselves up to be sort of slower or worse or less resource efficient at moving the world forward. And next, I'm gonna give you a few examples where it's kind of obvious that there's nothing intrinsic that has slowed down human progress, yet it has slowed down. And actually here I build on Patrick Collison, who's the founder of Stripe, has this great sort of part of on his website that he calls FAST, where he sort of collects these examples of like sort of human projects that have gone really, really fast in the past and, you know, would seem inconceivable today. So let's look at it. You know, in 1930, you know, in New York, you know, Americans started building what was then the tallest building in the world, the Empire State Building. And, you know, 410 days after they started off, they had completed the project at a cost in 2019 dollars or 2019 terms of $564 million. Okay, so that seems like a pretty quick way of sort of a pretty well done sort of skyscraper project. You know, the tallest building in New York today is One World Trade Center. Construction was started in 2006. It took 3,112 days to complete it, and it cost $4 billion. Right, so that's what, like 8 times longer that it took to actually build it, and you know, it cost you know, 7 times more. So that seems concerning. Like, you know, there shouldn't be anything inherently more difficult about building sort of skyscrapers today. Like maybe we're making them a bit more luxurious or something, but it doesn't seem to explain like 8 times 7, like a 56 times, you know, sort of difference, like us having become sort of 56 times less efficient in building skyscrapers. Like it just doesn't seem to explain that. Okay, second example, you know, the New York built their first subway, which, as you can see, is maybe not as fancy as the subways today, but it's a subway nonetheless. They started building it in 1900, and 4.7 years later, they opened 28 stations of the New York subway. Yeah, so 5 years, 28 stations. In 2000, New York started building the Second Avenue subway, and, you know, 17 years later, they opened 3 stations. So that's, you know, a tenth of the stations, like in 4 times the time. So, you know, 40 times less efficient. So, you know, Lanzi Metro is not the only sort of subway project around the world that has taken a lot of time and cost a lot of money. The last example is, and you know, this is maybe a bit sort of this might be a bit cherry picked, but you know, in Alaska in 1942, you know, the US built a highway, and you can, you know, sort of imagine, at least looking at the picture, what sort of Alaska looks like. It's sort of very difficult terrain to build in. And, you know, in 234 days, they built 1,700 miles of highway, and it cost, you know, 1 meter of that highway, of that road in 2019 dollars cost $800 or $793 dollars. And, you know, if you look at sort of, you know, similar infrastructure projects today, and again, this may be a bit cherry picked, you can, you know, disagree whether the you know, comparison is fair, but, you know, this is the example that Patrick uses. So, you know, in 2001, San Francisco decided to build the Van Ness bus lane. It's a 2-mile bus lane in sort of San Francisco city center. And right now it's projected to be completed this year. So 20 years later, like 7,300 days later, and, you know, at a cost of $100,000 per meter. So, you know, 1,000 times more efficient, more expensive, and, you know, takes a way longer time. Similarly, you know, back in 1996, like, you know, most of us won't remember because this is around the year we were born, but, you know, you could cross the Atlantic, like, okay, this is sort of in tailwind and so on, like perfect conditions, but still, like a passenger jet crossed the Atlantic from New York to London in 2 hours and 53 minutes. Last year, the sort of record for a subsonic passenger plane was set by a Boeing 747, and it was 4 hours and 55 minutes. So it takes like almost twice as long to cross the Atlantic today. There are reasons related to safety, there's reasons related to kind of, comfort and so on. But still, it seems concerning that we're getting, like, we've got slower at flying across the Atlantic, certainly with like passengers on board. And just lastly, back in sort of 1961 or so, when Yuri Gagarin flew to space, America decided, or the US decided, that they're not going to lose the space race. Like, they're going to go to the moon in this decade, and they did that in 1969. They went to the moon with the Apollo mission, and it seems like the next step after going to the moon would go to the next sort of planet, or sorry, like a body outside of the Earth, which is Mars. And 52 years later, we're not sort of even close to going to Mars. There's certainly been aspirations to go there, but we're not close. And actually, like 1972 was the last time humans ventured beyond Earth's lower orbit, which is 2,000 kilometers from the surface of the Earth, whereas the moon is 400,000 kilometers away. So we've only covered what is that, like sort of 1/20th of the distance ever since sort of 1972. And maybe you can argue that like space exploration is vain and so on, but certainly we haven't traveled beyond that. So, now, maybe made a compelling case for the point that, the world isn't changing as fast as it used to, and we need to do something about it. And I guess the next question is, what should we do about it? And in part, I'm going to have to disappoint you there, because it turns out that we don't have great answers to these questions. Like, there's way too little research into like what the nature of progress is and how do we, create progress. Questions like how to fund science in a way that maximizes the creation of sort of meaningful steps forward. But I am going to give you a few data points that we at SLUSH have sort of uncovered. Well, they're not necessarily novel to our research, but ones that we've come across in sort of our work that may give you evidence of the kinds of things that we should research further, and maybe inspire you a little bit in your own work as well. So let's start with the fact that the world, while it may not be progressing as fast as it did, it certainly changes faster than it ever did, at least in a sort of a private market sense. So if you look at the list of and again, I'm sorry this is quite US based, but at the most valuable companies in the US in 1995 compared to 2020, there's no overlap. Like the list has totally switched over in 25 years, and even in sort of in sort of 10 years or 15 years, it's changed more or less over. And there's a huge structural change that has happened as well. We've gone from sort of retail and industrial companies to the list being dominated by 5 technology companies. And moreover, if you look at the sort of right-hand side of the screen, we've gone from a world where the most valuable companies in the world are sort of 100 years old to one in which they're between sort of 15 and 45 years old. And it just means, I think this is at the core of why we at SLUSH are inspired by sort of entrepreneurship, is that there's a reasonable prospect today that you can create one of the most valuable companies in the world in the span of sort of 15 or 20 years. And that means that sort of whatever institutions are out there right now that are sort of creating this progress that we should go for, can be replaced within that time. But let's go for a few lessons. So, we at SLUSH, we sort of organize an event for around 3,500 startups, or certainly did so in 2019. And, all of those startups apply, and we review the applications, and then we can do some research based on them. So here's a graph. We've looked at, based on whether the application that a startup submitted to SLUSH was submitted by a woman or a man, like how do they do in terms of funding and in terms of revenue? And the reason we've done this is unfortunately the world of early stage startup is still very sort of male dominant, and if a woman submitted an application, there's like kind of reason to believe that the company may be a little more diverse than the average company out there. And it turns out companies where the application was submitted by a woman have raised sort of whatever that is, sort of 30% less funding, but actually with that funding, like per euro of funding, they've generated more revenue, and the same holds for revenue per employee. So maybe this is specific to SLUSH, maybe this doesn't hold true at all, but we should certainly be obsessing about the question of like, does diversity increase productivity? We definitely believe it does, but we should be researching that further. And it certainly doesn't make sense that like 92% of European venture funding, so that's funding into startups, goes to all male teams. It doesn't make sense from a sort of equality point of view either, but it doesn't make sense from a sort of performance point of view, we don't think. Okay, second thing is, we looked at hardware versus software companies, right? So by when they were founded. So this is at the 2019 event. We looked at, when a hardware versus when a company was founded, by hardware versus software, do they generate more revenue? And it turns out for the first 4 years of companies' existence, software companies outperform hardware companies, but 5 years in, hardware companies pass software companies. And again, if this is true, it's kind of, it's insane that, those of you who know private equity and venture funding as a subset of it, private equity funds and venture capital funds around the world still operate dominantly on a 10-year cycle. So depending on when they invest, they have they can invest in companies that will return by virtue of exit, like going public or being sold, 7 or 10 years out, which simply isn't enough for, hardware companies. And as a result, on your lower right, you can see that, European deep tech funding, so that's funding into complex technology put to the market through a startup, is stagnant or decreasing. So we're not thinking longer term enough. Maybe, or at least we should be obsessing about this question. Do we need a structural change in the way we fund, innovation? And then, we're betting on, there's reason to think that we're betting on what's already out there. So if you look at the left, you can see that, European funding into startups has absolutely exploded over the past 10 years. It's 8 or 10 times higher than it used to be. But on the right-hand side, if you look at pre-seed funding, which is typically the first round a startup raises, that's actually started to decrease since 2016. So that's really worrying. All of this money is going towards funding the companies that are already out there, rather than testing the maximum number of ideas in the market. And there's another, I just wanted to throw another example out there that maybe this is something inherent to the way, human institutions change when they age. So this is an example of the NIH, the National Institute of Health in the US, which in 1980, when it was a younger organization, funded, 12 times more funding towards, or grant funding towards researcher under 40 than researcher over 50. And in 2017, that had totally changed around. So 5 times more funding to researcher over 50 than researcher under 40. And it just so happens that the median age when a Nobel Prize winner in physics did their work is 34.5 years. So maybe there's something inherent that when human institutions age, they also get less risk, more risk averse, and they don't they fund what's already out there. And yeah, because I'm out of time, I think the point I'm making is that there's there's reason to think that we're not making as much progress as we once did. We don't exactly know the answers. There are some kind of suggestive answers, which we should be, looking into more deeply. And we should all be obsessing about this question. And then maybe the thought I want to leave you with, which is on a bit of a tangent, is, so we think about, I'm about as young as you. We're young people in Finland. I just showed you that the world is changing faster than ever, and in 20 years, maybe you can create a company that's the most valuable company in the world, right? So okay, this maybe going to upset some of you, but up to 2010, I think the smartest Finnish youth went to work for Nokia, for McKinsey, for Kone. During the last 10 years, I'd argue that the most driven, the smartest Finnish youth has gone on to work for for startups, like the first generation of Finnish startups, which is food delivery companies like Volt, or B2B SaaS companies like Ivan and Supermetrics, or Facebook automation like Smartly, which are great companies, but they're not necessarily addressing the world's biggest problem. They're not necessarily moving the needle in terms of human progress. And my question is, after this pandemic is over, what will be the next thing that we all work on? And could it maybe be in one way or another, where it's in governments, whether it's in corporations, whether it's in academia, whether it's in young companies, could it be working towards actually progressing the world? Because we really need to solve our big problems. And I'm going to leave you with a thought, which is that from Margaret Mead, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mikko. All the information that you presented really was very interesting. Thank you very much for your time. And now we're going to move on to our second keynote. And let me welcome to Noel Joyce with his keynote, Future Selves. So just to say a little bit things before to introduce Noel, well, let me tell you that he is a designer, an innovator, an educator, and he's also passionate about mountain biking. He has a vast experience in working with hundreds of different startups, which has given him cultural insight into how to work with people from all the walks of life. So let me tell you, IDBMers, we can surely learn a lot from his experiences. So let's give the floor to Noel.
Hi everyone, I'm just going to share my screen and we can get going. And thank you for the opportunity to speak to you all today. And I'm going to talk a little bit about our future selves and just a little bit more of an introduction about myself. I won't go on about it too long. I'm actually a wheelchair user myself as a result of a mountain biking accident, and I got back into mountain biking recently, but that's a different story. But in this talk, I'd like to talk a little bit about our future selves and how learning about disability today can help you and others in the future. And I think it's particularly apt that the theme of the conversation today is about metamorphosis, because I feel like that I have done this. I spent 26 years able-bodied, and I've spent the last 16 years disabled. And I think that we will all experience a metamorphosis. It's an ongoing process throughout our lives that we really, can impact us suddenly or happens over time. So I want to talk a little bit about disabilities and my experiences as a disabled designer, and how we should look at disabilities. I look at it as an inspiration for us to do better things for the future. I want to speak about how disability should be celebrated for their differences, because these differences are the extreme versions of the human condition, and how this can impact all of our lives. Because the human condition is not perfect, and in our efforts to optimize almost everything, we more and more create a world for the average person. But when you think about what is average, because what is average is always changing, and therefore there can never really be an average. And so the world needs to constantly change to accommodate the average. So we sort of go around chasing our tails a little bit. But it may not have to be like that if we look to the right sources to help us understand ourselves and how we change. And then we can build a world that accommodates how we change in advance with those changes occurring. So we can get ahead of the problem, so to speak. So again, I think to speak to the idea that we can't see the future, honestly, I believe disabled people can see the future. Because people with disabilities, they have a unique insight into problems in a frequency that's probably a multiple of what the average person will experience in every day of their lives. So, if you think about how we solve problems on the fly, a lot of us that are maybe able-bodied don't have to do the same thing at the same frequency, that it becomes a learned or a learned behavior, we'll say. It's something though that people with disabilities have to do all the time. And this learned behavior becomes embedded and ingrained and becomes this problem-solving activity that immediately is considered every time a problem comes up. So the frequency at which you have to do that with a disability means that you're probably able to problem solve in a more effective, faster way. Because many people with disabilities are constantly engaged in solving the hard problems around planning for eventualities in a world which is in many cases uncertain. So for example, I myself have to think about several different things before I go anywhere, which means that I'm already anticipating problems and I'm already trying to solve them in case there's different issues that might occur. This isn't something that the average person might have to deal with on a regular basis. Of course, this is with the exception of a few circumstances. So for people with disabilities, it's a constant and unrelenting process of problem solving that cannot be put to one side, or you will suffer the consequences. You just don't have an option. So in my opinion, it's probably fair to say that people with disabilities are some of the best forward planners and problem solvers in our society today. In some ways, they can see the future. And when I think about that, I think about the value we can add to people's lives, people with disabilities, by engaging in different ways people with with different types of disabilities to be able to do work that maybe we couldn't do in the past without the technology that we have today. For example, in Japan, people with ALS operate robots remotely in cafes, taking orders, speaking to customers, etc., giving new life to people who find themselves with these kinds of disabilities, but also giving new value to institutions, and giving new value to cafes and shops and stores and things like that, with people where people can interact with a real person instead of just a robot. And I think these kinds of innovations can be really, really interesting and help people to have value in their lives, as well as add value in the service industry, for example. And another example I think about is that this intellectual horsepower exists in people with disabilities. How in China in 2019, remote surgery was carried out on an animal over a distance of something like 2,000 kilometers. And later on that year, brain surgery was carried out on a human over the same distance. And this means that problem solvers, people who may be natural problem solvers, as in the people with disabilities, may be able to carry out these kinds of work remotely. They don't have to be in a place, at a specific place, to be able to carry out that work. And I just think that we should reimagine the intellectual horsepower that's available to us of these problem solvers to be able to do this kind of work. Because some of the things that we need to think about and consider, and when I think about the previous slideshow, what was being talked about, is there is some numbers that are pretty exponential. They keep growing all the time. 15% of the planet's population, in fact, are disabled. And it's the biggest minority group in the world. And the largest part of that group is actually the elderly, which is a pretty interesting thing. So when we look at, say, for example, the numbers behind the age of people on the planet, right? In 2019, 9% of the planet's population was over the age of 65, and by 2100, it'll be over 23% of the population will be over the age of 65, and the world starts to close in and gets to be a little bit more difficult of a place to be as we age. So by virtue of these numbers and the fact that we get old, if we're lucky enough to live long enough, the chances are that every one of us will become disabled. There's no question about it. It's actually going to happen to all of us, and the world will begin to close in and get a bit more difficult. And I always think, right, why do we build a world that we have to constantly evolve and change for a larger population, a larger group of our population that's going to have more difficulty, when we have the power today to do something about that? We don't have to keep creating barriers or creating solutions to get over barriers. We can start thinking about how we can make those differences today. And I always ask the question when we think about technology, and I've worked with hundreds of startups on various types of technology, why do we build things like robots that are designed to navigate in an inaccessible world? Because we're the ones that have direct control over that. And there is going to be some circumstances where it's completely unavoidable, but they should be minimized. It shouldn't be about trying to get over obstacles we put in our own way, because more and more people will have to deal with those obstacles in the future. So I'm going to give you an example of how I use my design capabilities and design thinking to solve a particular problem, and to look at a particular issue I suffered with myself that helped to solve those issues or solve that problem. So the question, how did diabetes repair a footpath? It might seem a bit sort of abstract, but I'm going to explain how. Roughly about 4 or 5 years ago, I went to the doctor myself, and I had not been feeling too well. I had sort of developed a lot of fatigue, and I thought that maybe I was working too hard and all the rest of it, as many of us do in the startup world. But what ended up happening was that I got diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. And it sort of came as a shock to me. And the doctor was sort of like, this is a medication you need to take to be able to manage the condition. And she was able to tell me about then, as a result of some queries I had, could I reverse it or could I do something about taking medication? I really didn't want to go down that road if I could do it. And she told me about a diet that I could go on, but I also had to get more exercise and lose weight. And to me, a couple of those things seemed like, why weren't they the things that I was told first? So when I started down the road of trying to solve the problem, I ended up in a situation where it got quite difficult to actually get out my wheelchair because the vibration and impact would cause me a lot of pain. So I ended up in a catch-22 situation where I could deal with the pain of the vibrations and impacts through my wheelchair, or I could try to solve the problem. And what I ended up doing was attaching camera to my wheelchair and then attaching sensors to the chair to be able to monitor vibration and impact on footpaths. And what this allowed me to do then was to create digital breadcrumbs of issues and problems that occurred in the built environment. And by doing that, then I was able to create data that I could submit to my local authorities or local council to be able to go, okay, here's where issues are in the footpaths that need to be fixed. And what this could do then was enable them to go out and target specific problems that were far more obvious through vibration impact and real world data than what the average person who might be walking would understand. Because the average person who would maybe trip over a gap in the footpath may not fall, but a person in a wheelchair can't take that risk. But the other side of it as well is that by identifying these issues, we were able to find public liability problems too. So we were able to create data that enabled the local authorities to repair footpaths, help people with disabilities, and also help people not have accidents in relation to trips and falls. So resulting problems that, the resulting repairs to problems that existed for at least 8 years, which is pretty interesting because these issues were there for a very long period of time, but no one did anything about them until we were able to gather data and show the vibration impacts and all the issues around. The local authorities may not know that they were there or may just avoid doing anything about them. And we were able to do this for quite a long stretch of footpath from where I live outside the town of Tullamore into the town centre. And the cumulative impact over that distance for me when I was using it regularly before this was very similar. The G-forces were similar to going around with a boxer. So you can understand, like, all these G-forces going through the body all the time, the amount of pain that people with disabilities were enduring. But the other side of it as well is we don't know the impacts that maybe we would have on toddlers and strollers. And if an older person tripped and fell on any of these obstacles, it becomes a sentence where you may not get out of bed again. So the impact of the differences that the wheelchair, the data we gather from the wheelchair could make was going to affect all of society. And this is another example looking at the footpath that was repaired. But what's really interesting in recent times for me has been that, I just having showed you this example, that everyone on the planet has experienced what it's like for the world around you to be limited because of COVID, right? In the last year, we've sort of seen what it's like to be in a position where we can't go somewhere, we can't do the things that we want to do, whatever it might be. But this is sort of the life that most people with disabilities live. And it's certainly the life that a lot of people, when they get older, live, right? And the fact is that we're all going to end up in that position. So why aren't we doing something about that now? That would be the question I would ask. If we can understand more about what our future selves is going to have to endure, then maybe we would start thinking about that now. And we can take experience, we can take the experience that we've had over the last year to understand what issues we need to solve for ourselves in the future. And I think that will have a big impact on the world. And I think that by sort of looking at it from that perspective, we will create a better world for everyone, for regardless of capabilities for the future. Another example for me was during one of the recent points in time where a lockdown was lifted, to go into a coffee shop and the gaps of 2 meters between tables and chairs made it completely accessible where it was never accessible before. And we never thought about accessibility in the same ways. We don't even think about it as accessibility. We think of it as social distancing. But for me, a lot of the time, it ends up being accessible, which is a sort of a silver lining to this gray cloud that COVID has put over us. So as a call to action, I think governments, companies, employers, and educators should embrace and engage disability because it is in our destiny. And it's nothing that we have a way to control in any way, shape, or form. We have the capability today to do something about it. People with disabilities will have unique insights into things that you will never understand until it's too late. And they'd have the potential to deliver ideas that will help everyone in every organization. And I think perhaps even help you when frailties as a human do begin to inflict the inevitable upon us, right? And I know that's a little bit dark, but it is what's going to happen. So, I would encourage people to not look at disability as something that needs to be helped, but to look at it as our future selves and tap into this unique knowledge base to make a truly powerful impact on humanity, because we all need these potential solutions in the future. And I hope that you guys go forward and take this kind of these kinds of thoughts into account in whatever you do in the future. And I just want to ask the question then, how will you use design to help you and others future selves? Thank you.
Wow, I see a lot of people clapping. Noel, thank you very much. I really loved how you gave us a complete new perspective for looking at disabilities. Thank you very much for your time and for making this space for us. And also, to our guest speakers, thank you very much. It was a pleasure to having you here. And now we're going to move to the main part of this event, which we are going to be hearing from our 11 teams as they pitch their final concept for the challenges that they received from their clients in the last December. So I'm going to explain a little bit of how this is going to be evolving. We have 11 teams that are divided into 5 groups. Each of the groups has their own focus, and we're going to have 2 short breaks after groups 1 and 2, and then we're going to have a longer 30-minute break after the group 4. So just as a quick reminder to everyone, each team is going to have approximately 3 minutes to pitch their concept. After each group of teams, we're going to have a 5-minute Q&A for any questions that you might have. And also, if you have any burning questions that you really want to get answered, well, don't forget that we have our exhibition booths open after all the pitches. So in case you would like to know more a little bit about the specifics of each team. So it's here, the time. We're moving on towards our first group. And this past year and a half, we have seen an unprecedented shift towards remote work. And while many of us, this was meant only joining Zoom for our daily classes, well, for others, this was an opportunity to explore the challenges that exist within education. And that's exactly what these 2 first teams did. And as they are looking specifically to young education, both on a global and on a domestic level. So our first team, PBL Bio Africa, worked with Aalto Global Impact to enhance problem-based learning in sub-Saharan Africa, African universities, for a more sustainable bioeconomy. So PBL Bio Africa, the stage is yours.
Hello, we are Emilia and Falguni, and today we are taking you some 10,000 kilometers away to Kenya. Why Kenya? While working with the project PBL Bio Africa, we realized that it's a country that is driven by agriculture, but ironically, this is also the industry that sees very little innovation. How so? Well, the unfortunate reality is that the students studying agriculture are not exposed to the real world, to the real problems out there. And these are the students who are expected to be the flag bearers of the future of Kenyan agri-innovation and bioeconomy. So how can we expect these students to solve climate change if university is just about listening to 7 hours of Zoom? So we asked ourselves, what would it take to transform the education system in Kenya? Problem-based learning, PBL, is the key here. We found that it has a long-term impact on students' development, as well as communities and economies at large. Building on this, we went ahead and designed a demonstrative PBL course. We worked with students from the Southeastern Kenya University, and our goal was to test what kinds of tools and practices can be applied by their teaching team and create a meaningful learning experience. And how did this work out, Falguni?
Well, Emilia, let's go back to where it all started, shall we? While designing this course, we aimed for the glamorous design sprint as we know it. We did our will magic and created a course page, pre-assignments, introductory videos, and then reality hit. Our ideal design sprint turned into a very slow walk. Adapting our methods was no cakewalk. Our course page was now a casual WhatsApp message. Zoom required phones to be hung up on ceilings for network. And all this went south with one rainstorm. But it was not all doomsday. Our most valuable learnings came post having to adapt to these circumstances. We learned that there is no one-size-fits-all when it comes to PBL. So we slowed down our pace, we simplified complex canvases, and most importantly, we did not pretend to be anything else but fellow students working together. We realized that these students were extremely resilient. In this newfound safe space, they shared their ideas openly, they stepped out of their comfort zones, and in their own words, felt like the main character of the story. So where does this experience lead us to? We now know for a fact that for PBL to work, students need to take the lead, teachers need to give up their idea of the perfect scenario, and strongly avoid that this is how the world works approach. All our learnings will now be documented on Aalto Global Impact's website and act as a resource bank for these teachers to draw from. The Kenyan education system awaits a transformation, and this is only the start of a movement towards better learning. Thank you.
Thank you, Team Bio Africa. You did such an amazing work. I saw you working all the 6 months, and I really like your project. But now we're going to move on to the second team that we'll be presenting today, and is a team co-location, who worked alongside Plan International to reach the digital division faced by immigrant children living in Eastern Helsinki. So, Team Project Co-Location, the stage is yours.
Hi, Lucia. Thank you so much. Okay. Hello, everyone. We are Team Plan International, and our project aims at bridging the digital divide faced by teenage immigrants in Finland. This project is a global project and is part of the Sugar GKO network and was done in collaboration with the students from Trinity College in Dublin, Ireland.
Every year, Finland gets about 11,000 parachute children, and we are simply immigrants from different countries. I too am a parachute girl, but it has been lonely. The language is difficult. Schools are different here. I don't have many friends. Corona made school even harder. I wasn't ready for internet education because I've never had an email or worked with Google. The teacher always did it for us. But then I found Nosta, and I'm not alone anymore. There are students like me and teachers who help us. Together we learn, grow, and create. So come see the world of Nosta.
So, welcome to the world of Nosta, a platform which connects teachers, various NGO organizations, and students to facilitate socio-educational learning for immigrant children. Currently, the platform contains digital and language learning skills. So what exactly is this Nosta? On the B2C side, we have students who participate as players on the platform. They simply log in, fill in their details. They answer a couple of questions which gauge their current capabilities. They choose what they want to do and are eventually sorted into guilds via an algorithm which sorts them out with other children with similar skill sets. On the secondary level, we have teachers who facilitate these groups in order to maintain structure and also to protect child rights and engage them in interactive workshops via Zoom. Now, these interactive sessions contain games or interactive workshops which are created by third-party applications like blended play. Gamification is one of the first features of Nosta, and though powered by a third-party player, it's all customized by us. We are an open-ended platform and we welcome more like blended play. Now here is a demo of a small game called Space Sail. The students all log in and they're sort of divided into groups depending on their numbers. Digital literacy questions are popped on the screens and they interact with each other regarding what the answer could be to engage in conversation. And this aim here is not just to learn about skills, but to also make friends. The winner is decided based on who answers the right questions or the wrong questions, and they win, so on and so forth. So the platform Nosta is hinged under the umbrella of Plan International, our sponsor, who is connected to many immigrant children and schools. We aim to network under the umbrella of Plan International and connect with all these stakeholders. Every child deserves a bright future, so let's not leave anyone behind. This is Team Nosta signing off. Thank you.
Congratulations, Team Nosta, you made it! Now you can rest, guys. So, very good presentation. Now we're going to move to a Q&A session. We're going to have 5 minutes if you want to ask any questions to one of these two teams. So you can just open your mic, or if you want to, you can just raise your hand or ask questions.
I think Stephen has a question.
Yeah.
Yes, can I ask a question? Yeah, I would love to learn more about the Nosta team. So I'm curious, so could you elaborate more? How is your platform different from the other education application on the market?
Sure, we can elaborate a bit more. Hi, I'm Johannes from Plan International team. The Nosta is not just an application, it is a platform, and it is a unique, scalable platform that can grow over time. And also one of the key differences is our grouping algorithm that can connect people with similar skill sets that then they will learn well.
Yeah, and I want to...
Yes, and I want to add another part about the platform is that we connect people. So for normal education application, for example, like Duolingos or quizzes, is developed by one organization and remain within the same one organizations. But here we invite other creators to contribute and like add more features and learning creations into help these immigrant children to connect each other. So that is the main point. We value the humanities connection networking beyond learning.
Thanks. And then Riina has a question.
Yes, thank you. I had a question to the PBL BioAfrica team, actually. You were working on the question of problem-based learning, and together with a couple of different African countries and with students and faculty over there. And I was just wondering, in starting the discussion on what is problem-based learning and how should that be conducted online, how difficult or easy was it to undertake that conversation? And as you started talking about the concept of problem-based learning online, you know, what were the perhaps misinterpretations or difficulties in getting on the same page on the topic?
Yeah, I can give it a shot. I think the most difficult part was for us to understand what problem-based learning meant to different people, because we realized that it means something different to everybody. It means something different to the students. It means something different to the teachers. So for us to understand that and decide whose perspective are we going to cater to was the most difficult part. But I think since we had a ground that was more relevant to the students, we chose to do that, and that worked out.
Yep. Okay, thank you very much for all of your questions. Right now, what follows is that we're going to have a short 5-minute break. So you can just stretch a bit and go to the bathroom or take a break. And we're going to be back at 2:09. Okay? Thank you, guys. Thank you very much. Welcome back, friends. This is Lucia Llerena, and welcome to this second round of presentations for the IDBM Impact Gala. So our second group of teams took a look on how adult learning can be utilized to its full potential, whether it can be through facilitating understanding on our data-filled world, or whether supporting you in preparing your future, or helping those less fortunate with the power of community. Our first theme for this group, the Data Equilibrium Workshop, collaborated with ATARCA to find an easily approachable way to educate others on the data economy by turning abstract into tangible in an interactive manner. So, Team ATARCA, go on.
Thank you, Lucia. Data is the new oil. It is a valuable resource of our economy and a crucial part of businesses and innovations. But is it the whole truth about data? Let's find it out. What if we were to look at data through another perspective? Could data be seen as water, sunlight, maybe a sand. Let's take the perspective of sand to imagine how it could be. Meet Niina, a successful business leader. She's meeting her colleagues to sign an important deal today. The negotiations begin. However, instead of money, equities, or contracts, they're using sand for exchange. They take sand out of their pockets and shuffle it around the table, since only when shared can the real value of data be discovered. The sand that is shuffled in the middle of the table starts to take shape of a beautiful sand castle. When combined, beautiful things can be crafted with data. The point with data as sand in the story is that data is a collaborative resource that is made to be shared, circulate, and bring value to everyone, businesses, cities, communities, you name it. Our client ATARCA works within new technological solutions for data value distribution. ATARCA is an EU-funded research group consisting of 5 companies and organizations. Upon research and interviewing experts from Citra, Demos, and Aalto University, our team discovered that professionals don't all share the same understanding of data as a resource. There are different views and even major misconceptions, because those concepts, they are complex. Key concepts around data economy need to be made more tangible and digestible. Better understanding leads to a more fair value distribution and societal benefits. We have the solution that helps to understand data as a resource. Workshop in a wallet, a pocket-sized tool that will make you think about data in a way that you have never done before. The compact size of the workshops allows rethinking data in a small, easily digestible pieces, and it can be done independently. It includes 12 metaphor cards, 5 games, and a notebook. The metaphor cards will make you to look at data through the lens of another subject, each giving an alternative perspective on data. The metaphor cards are used in 5 different games. The games allows you to experiment with the metaphor, both in the everyday and business context, helping you understand the unique qualities of data. And what's cool about it is that the workshop is free and available for sharing. The workshop will be launched soon online at workshopwallet.com. Make sure to check it out and enter your email. We will notify you once it's available. Thank you.
Wow, congratulations, Team ATARCA. I really loved your presentation. Thank you very much. So now we're moving on to a team that found a way to approach to a topic that we are all invested in, and it's actually investing in our future. And for something that can be really stressful for many of us, including me, well, the team Spins Best, and together with the Finnish bank Säästöpankki, have developed a way for social investing service to make financial decisions fun, encouraging, and friendly. So the stage is yours.
Saving money is so hard. It's some proper work. I was once saving for that dream vacation of mine in Southeast Asia. I lived on a shoestring budget for some months before the trip to just have something to spend. And to be honest, I was doing an aimless sprint in saving, as if I was on a pitch black running track. One wrong step and I would be down. And then it happened. My washing machine broke and I did not fly to Bangkok. Really sad. What we have realized is that right now, there are so many people who do not know how to gain momentum and get a better grip of their financials in the long run. Have you ever been in this situation? But what if you considered saving and investing money marathon training? You would do slow, consistent steps to just have stronger feet. What if you got the best possible support for financial matters from your close ones and experts in an approachable environment? With Spinvest, we want every single young adult to feel financially well through proper habits in saving and investing their money. And let's do this with a low threshold, in a fun and meaningful way, with a community that encourages you to put aside those small sums that will eventually let you fly to the sunset. Who is your Spinvest community then? We believe that all the important decisions in life should be done together with our close ones. Family, friends, the people you trust the most. Spinvest brings these people closer to help with those challenging decisions. Typically, one is too alone in deciding where they put their precious money. There are too many options: when to buy, what to buy, stocks, funds, bonds, you name it. And this can be so overwhelming. Not everyone is supposed to be an investment banker. Spinvest encourages you to share the efforts. We want your circle to maintain a dialogue on these important matters. Let's say your friends think it is a great idea to put your money in renewable energy because they want to simply help the environment. You are notified that one of them has gone for it on Spinvest. You could now do the same thing. You discuss this through with your friend to learn more about the matter. You're in the same team. 64,000 people. That's how many come to an age where they should start investing to feel financially well every single year. And only a fraction of them does that because of how lost they feel with their money. But together, we can make it possible for all of us to get on that flight to Thailand. Spinvest towards financial well-being, together.
Very good job, Team Spinvest. I can really say that I'm going to use your service. It's a really good idea. But now we're going to move to the last but not least team from this group. And our final team shows the same thread of community, but this time they shift the focus towards the people that need special support. Team Life Community has worked with the organization Invalidisäätiö to improve their services and customer experience by creating life-changing impact for those aboarded. So go on, team.
Thanks, Lucia. Probably you all know that we spend about a third of our day working. Therefore, many of us define our identities through work, as it is a huge part of our lives. At work, we can often feel the sense of community as we have something to belong to and people to interact with. In Finland, 8.1% of the labor force is currently unemployed. These people are more or less lacking the work identity and the community to belong to. Often, unemployment is considered a very sensitive topic, and people who categorize themselves as unemployed are actually more likely to experience serious psychological distress. Our client, Invalidisäätiö, or more particularly, their service brand Live, is one of those great organizations that are working towards solving the unemployment challenge in Finland and helping people to get back to work life. They provide individual coaching for people looking for help in finding a new job. However, they wondered whether they had an actual impact on their customers' lives and how their services could be improved even further in a way that would provide customers more value. Based on our research, we found that most clients were already quite content with the coaching services they were offered. However, we also identified this smaller group of people that are dissatisfied with their services because they already have good job seeking skills and are therefore looking for more advanced jobs What these people are lacking is a professional network and a sense of belonging. For this reason, we propose that Live creates a community for their customers where people can connect and interact in various meaningful ways and together tackle the obstacles of finding a new job. Live community connects job seekers with employers and other field professionals. The pool of employers varies from traditional partners to startups. Events are organized to inform and connect these parties to enhance and speed up the process of finding a new job. The community is run by its members, Live as customers, and therefore they are completely in charge of the community activities. More experienced members can utilize their expertise and mentor newcomers to get started with their job hunting. Everyone is welcomed, even after they have finished with Live services and got employed. Instead of going through unemployment alone, now we can all support each other in the process of finding a new job. Alone we can do so little, but together we can do so much. And this is what Live community is all about. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Team Invalidisäätiö. Congratulations, all of you guys, the 3 teams. Now we're going to move on to a Q&A session. We're going to have 5 minutes where you can answer any question that you have. And I don't know if anyone has any. Okay, Sam, you can go on.
I have a question for Team ATARCA. I really like what you guys did, but I just want to know why does the perspective on data have to change? Like where does that need arise from? Like I know it has to change, but like why do you think that change has to arise? Because I know data right now is like the big thing, but
yeah, definitely. Thanks for the question. So even that it might look that everything going well and companies are using the data a lot, it's actually the truth that the data markets are failing because there is a lack of understanding of data as an anti-rival resource. It means that the one which is not losing its value, but it's actually gaining it when it's shared and reused. And that's one of the main concepts that we want people to understand. And the reason for that is because there is a lack of understanding. You know, data is, we can see that there are monopolies of companies, data is not shared, data is not used for its full potential. And that's the reason why we think that the shifting about the data should be moved towards more like data being a resource available for everybody.
I just want to have a follow-up to that because very recently Bill Gates was like, I don't want to share the vaccine data with like third world countries. So how are you going to tackle like, you know, giants like him who already have so much pull in the world and they don't want to share their data with like developing countries? So it just came to my mind. So
I mean, of course, we don't have an exact solution of, you know, like how we can push those organizations to do that. But of course, like one of the ways how we can try to achieve that to share this understanding are to educate people so that better understand that everybody will have more benefits when it is shared. So that's our like goal, to actually make people understand it better.
Awesome.
Thank you. Okay, now I see that Claire raised her hand. You can go on. Claire, we cannot hear you. It's only me or we can. No.
She's not on mute, but we can't hear.
Claire, we cannot hear you, Claire. So can you speak now to see? No, we still cannot hear you. No. Yeah, because we see this green screen. Okay, yeah, you can type.
Is your microphone on?
It's there, yeah.
Okay, I can talk this way then. So my question is, this data that we're seeing the benefits of is used or is created by people. So how, or in what way does this project, the ATARCA project, I guess try to educate people on the data that they, like the human side of it. So not just how companies can benefit from it, but how are people made aware of the data that they're creating and how it's being used? It's a long question.
Yeah, it was the ATARCA team, right? Yes, so actually the focus group of our project, that's the name of the persona, that's Pekka. So we are actually targeting the professionals who are working already with data in the IT industry, because we also believe that changing the mind of the decision making, so those people who are running these companies, who understand the data to some extent, but they maybe don't yet know all those like specific qualities which we're discussing, like anti-rivalry and need of the data sharing and data transparency. So for now, our project is focusing on that group. It doesn't aim to change the minds of the individuals or of the people who are actually sharing the data.
Super. Also, I saw that Prashant over there had a question. I don't know if you still have it.
It's actually me here, Helena.
Okay.
I would have a question for the Invalidisäätiö group, because I'm actually working on a very similar project for another course, and we've had similar insights about the peer support, like how important it is for people with disabilities. But one problem we ran into is kind of that, well, this peer support still requires a lot of time. And if these people are actually employed, they might not have the time to put into kind of coaching others. So I was thinking if you've had any ideas that you need to incentivize it somehow, or it's like purely community based. What you thought of so far?
Hi, can you hear me? Small echo in the room. But yes, we were thinking many different kind of ways how to make it easy for the community members, because of course the outcome should be to find a new job, since that's the reason what combines all these people. So we were thinking that of course there needs to be room for the people, those ones who want to be more like passive members and those ones who want to be really active. So of course it should be always tailored on what's the member's own perspective and want, how he or she wants to be part of the community. You know, some people might have a lot of time that they really want to help each other. They might have like 5 different other members who they're mentoring or peer mentoring, or then they might be like one-to-ones who are only mentoring each other. So we were thinking more it's the beauty is in the community because they are forming it, but of course there needs to be someone who is guiding these through the process. So yeah, I think we're going to see it in practice, since of course we are hoping that this is going to be the pilot, like first testing in small and then scaling up if it seems it's going to be possible to scale up and people get excited in this peer mentoring way. Now I think I probably got lost, but in a way it should be either a one-to-one or that one person can share the knowledge even for more peers.
Thank you, Annika. Now I see another raising of hand, but I don't know from who. I don't see it again, but I think it was Aalto International or something.
Aalto Global Impact. Yes,
yes.
Emilia speaking. Hi. Yeah, actually, I would have a question for Säästöpankki. So when you were doing your research, did you find any similar solutions out there? And how would you say that Spinvest is, what is the advantage of your solution compared to the others?
Hi, I'm part of the Säästöpankki team. I can take this question. So yes, actually, indeed, we eventually encountered some social investing platforms, but the difference is that those approach the thing more closely to investment clubs, which have a background in the physical collaborative investing. And they tend to approach this social investing with a shared pool of money. And at least the solutions we've seen are not presenting it for like approachable small group of people you trust and so that the system would be transparent and with social accountability between the team members. So we believe that that's something that can be leveraged with Spinvest solution. Thanks.
Thanks, sounds good.
Well, thank you very much for your questions, everyone. Now we're going to move on to 1 5-minute break, so you can take a break from the screen. And then we're going to move on with the group 3 and the group 4 in presenting. So I will see you back at 2:38, and let's wait. Hello, everyone. We are back into the second half of this IDBM Gala. And now we're going to have the groups 3 and 4 in a way to present their project presentations. So in our next team's presentation, the group 3, we veer away from education into the future of logistics and distribution. We have all seen the acceleration of e-commerce throughout the pandemic. But what aspects of sustainability can be integrated into a massively growing industry? And if possible, what sort of role will automation play in the last mile delivery? So let me welcome Team Kone Robotics, that were challenged by Kone robotic ecosystems to develop into the later area, the future of smart buildings with multi-purpose usage, and also material carrying tools that operate within the next 10 to 15 years. Their goal was specifically to tackle the last meter delivery in particular. So let's welcome this next team.
The technology industry is growing fast, and so is the demand for modern services that building owners can provide to their clients. To survive, they need to be agile and be future ready. Robots could assist buildings in this race for tech supremacy, yet we mostly only see them in dark spaces, invisible to the public. Clearly, there is a gap between the supplier and the consumer. The delivery robot industry is predicted to boom in the upcoming decade, thus creating a massive untapped market for indoor delivery robots. The growth in the next 5 years only is expected to go from 200 million to nearly 1 billion. Although the technology of delivery robots is here, the market is not yet ready. Why? We identified some core reasons for this. Firstly, buying robots requires risky investments. Second, most of the existing buildings are not optimized for robots. And third, there's an underlying customer prejudice when it comes to robots. The market needs a solution that reduces the gap between the robot manufacturers and the businesses, a solution that makes robots more accessible, improves trust in the industry, and removes the barriers for market entry. Therefore, we developed Kone Robotics Flow, a platform which connects robot companies willing to rent their robots to multipurpose buildings. Kone Robotics Flow provides a seamless rental experience by brokering the robots from the manufacturers to lenders with optimized matchmaking. Renting allows businesses to create and access robots at a cheaper price rather than paying a single large sum. This also allows businesses to upgrade their robots and get the latest technology. In parallel, the robot manufacturers benefit from this by having more of their robots in use. Also, the Kone Robotics Flow platform prepares the buildings for robotics by offering additional services and utilizing Kone products like automated doors and connected elevators. As a result, combining robotic flow to people flow. In the future, the more companies rent robots, the more common they will be in indoor spaces and also around us. This will further help increase trust and reduce assumptions that we have against robots. In conclusion, the platform delivers a smooth rental experience by offering visibility, matchmaking, safety, and logistics, making it the perfect turnkey solution. In our vision, Kone will not only be a platform enabler, Kone will create an ecosystem for delivery robots for the future. Thank you.
Very good, Rohan. I loved your presentation. Congratulations. And it would be really interesting to see a future like this in 10, 15 years. I really hope we can achieve a good future like the one you proposed. But for envisioning with that future, we need to think, well, what should we be doing today? And actually, the team Posti got us covered with that one, because they have worked together to reimagine our daily parcel deliveries by envisioning a sustainable business opportunity. So go on, Team Posti.
Okay, hi everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. So imagine a world where instead of having clutter in your apartment or house, you could give away or sell the things you don't need to the people or companies who do, all at the convenient click of a button. Instead of living in a world that can't seem to stop wasting, it would put us in the right direction towards a more circular economy. But that's not the reality. In reality, valuable goods are just sitting in your closet and someone could benefit from them. I'm sure we've all been there when a family member or a significant other has nagged you to get rid of old electronics or clothes that you don't wear. And we get you. It's so difficult to find out how to dispose of or hand off certain things properly. Now, Posti manages to visit a staggering 3.2 million households every single day. But every day, those delivery trucks return empty. Now that, together with expensive last mile delivery costs, means that unused space on the return journey is incredibly valuable. Now, we took these problem areas to heart over these past few months as we were challenged to explore reverse logistics solutions, and that's what led us to our concept, Posti Plus.
Maria is a young and busy worker living in the city center. There are many things in her apartment she would like to return or give away, like old electronics or clothes, but just doesn't have the time. Thankfully, Posti Plus is the solution. Posti Plus is a return marketplace on the Oma Posti app that allows you to choose from many affordable return services with just the click of a button. Posti Plus, let's create a more convenient and sustainable future together.
So with our concept, when the consumer makes an online order, they receive a notification to access the Oma Posti application and enter the Posti Plus marketplace. There you can choose from a variety of return services with your delivery for just a small fee per option. And when you receive your delivery, you simply hand off your item for selling, renting, or recycling. So who do we see this benefiting? Well, for Maria, our busy city worker, Posti Plus allows her to join a sustainable community by conveniently shopping in an online environment. Businesses joining the Posti Plus return marketplace get access to Posti's consumer base, routes, and workers, saving them time and money in reaching consumers. And finally, with the future of return logistics at a critical turning point, Posti can build a community, a network through the Oma Posti platform that creates value for everyone. Now, as with any innovative concept, Foundations are crucial to success. That's why we see this rolling out over a 3-year period, starting first with a standalone bottle return concept that we've validated thoroughly, not only with Posti, but also with a potential partner. Year 2 would see the first developments of the Posti Plus marketplace on Oma Posti with access to recycling and parcel sending services. And ultimately, a full rollout would see location-based services with laundry and potentially tool or clothing rentals added to Posti's robust list of consumer opportunities. With Posti Plus, leading a sustainable lifestyle is convenient, affordable, and fun. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Team Posti. I really liked your concept. It's very well thought. So now we're going to move on to the Q&A session of the group 3, which includes Kone, Robotics, and Posti. So if you have any questions, remember you can just unmute yourself or raise your hand.
Yes, hi, this is Emilia. Thanks for the both two interesting concepts. I have a question for the first one. So Kone Robotics. Rental business is gonna grow big. So how would you justify to your client all the investments that they need to put into the robotics for this rental business to actually get started? Thank you.
Yes, could you maybe repeat the last part again? Sorry.
Sorry, we have someone coming in.
Yeah, I was asking that because it needs a lot of investments for your client to start this kind of rental business that you are suggesting with your wonderful concept. So how would you rationalize to your client, Kone, to invest in these robots?
Sure. So also we were as we have been having chats with Kone, we have understood that the platform will work when there is economies of scale. So, and also Kone, we are imagining that the future of robotics would be created eventually. It's not yet there. So eventually what will happen is if Kone becomes a pinnacle of being a intermediate between the manufacturers and the consumers at the end, then we can create a future. And when Kone could be the main service provider in this future. So that will eventually leverage Kone to a much higher position and of course create much higher profits. Thank you for your question.
Okay, Tomo, you can go next.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, my question is for Team Posti. What thoughts do you have regarding the potential partners? How would you think they should be approached and maybe incentivized regarding the Posti Plus return marketplace?
Sure. So that's a good question. So when you think about a platform, the most important thing for acquiring new users is always going to be something like network effects. Once you get one and another, then people on the platform seem to start rolling in. And I think the same thing applies when it comes to actual businesses that take part in a platform. The more you have and the importance of those very first partnerships are going to dictate how many you can get later down the line. So that's why for us, we put a lot of effort into validating the first partner that we would want. We can't necessarily say who it is, but we can say that we put a lot of work into it and making sure that it's something that you can use to acquire data, to make sure that you are finding the right partners to onboard so that you can prove, hey, this works, this is really great and it's working really well. That power, that traction gives you the ability to then approach other partners later down the line and say, look, it works. You have no choice but to join this.
Thanks, sounds reasonable.
Super. Well, if there are no any other questions, they are.
Yeah, I have a question.
Okay, sorry.
I'll speak up. I have a question for Posti as well. I really like the idea, and I especially like the sustainability aspect of it. But I started to wonder if this, because that's like a super good idea, but I mean more like electronics and so on. I wonder if that maybe in a sense encourages consumption, because you don't have to worry about what to do with it later. So you just like, yeah, I want a new iPhone, and you get rid of the last one like super easily, which increases consumption in the end then.
No, it's a really good point that you bring up, Helena. And I think ultimately it comes down to understanding how the consumer is going to react to a certain innovation or a certain situation. Once they have access to something, how is that consumer behavior going to change? I can't say for sure what the future would be like in that they would want to actually start consuming more. It could be that they decide to start buying more electronics so they can just hand them off. But the fact that all of a sudden it is shared as opposed to disposed is already a step in the right direction. So it would be interesting to see what kind of data would be collected down the line to see how that does change.
Thanks.
Okay, this time I think there are no other questions that we didn't answer. So what we're going to do now is that before jumping into the big 30-minute break, we're going to jump first directly to that group 4 in order to let them share their presentations. And I need to tell you that I'm sure I'm not the only one to say that health has been my major concern for the last year during the pandemic. And through COVID-19, we have seen the devastating effects on healthcare system around the world by looking at bottlenecks and bottlenecks that have been present on the primary level, and also in the identifying of potentially life-threatening illnesses. And also, on a different note, employers are now seeking to ways to how to double down on their efforts to protect their employees, especially while operating machinery. So now we're going to have the team AMRI, who has collaborated with Aalto Accessible MRI to identify in which area the new patient technology for MRIs would be the most valuable and will have the most impact. So go on, team.
Thank you, Lucia. Our client approached us with a new technology called AMRI. AMRI is a medical imaging device that, unlike the existing ones, allows for radiation-free medical imaging without many demands from its surroundings. Even though these are great properties to make an impact, AMRI is in need of a use case, and this is where our team comes into play. Our research suggests that AMRI is especially well suited for pulmonary imaging, and COPD, or keuhkoahtaumatauti, is the most common lung disease after asthma, and it's also the biggest cause of death in worldwide. COPD is mostly caused by air pollution and smoking. Therefore, certain populations and occupations are more at risk. Maybe you even know someone with COPD. At early stage, the only effects are the common smoker's cough and reduced stamina. But if COPD progresses, within some years, the patient might need supplemental oxygen even to walk to mailbox. But what made COPD use case especially interesting was not the number of patients or the severity of the disease. The current imaging techniques are not sufficient for early COPD diagnosis. The early symptoms of COPD are very similar to other lung diseases, and the gold standard imaging to diagnose is X-ray. However, X-ray doesn't show COPD until the lung changes are at severe stage. A CT scan would show the lung changes earlier, but is often avoided because of heavy radiation of CT, which can also cause a lung cancer. Our team identified early diagnosis of COPD as the ideal first use case for AMRI, as it might show COPD earlier than X-ray, but without radiation of CT. Unfortunately, COPD lung damage is irreversible. Therefore, early detection through AMRI could make a real impact on people's life. In fact, these possibilities are not limited to COPD. Lung cancer screening, for example, would also be feasible with AMRI. However, we didn't stop with the use case. We also investigated the deployment scenarios and stakeholder needs. The two key takeaways are the following. Early stage COPD patients are, because of minor symptoms, usually treated in local healthcare units. Thus, we propose making AMRI available locally and not just in advanced university hospitals. Another key need we found is not to overburden radiologists with additional images, which we plan to use as AI assistance. Our findings help AMRI development team to prioritize the most important stakeholder needs and provide them a use case that help AMRI to add a new capability to Finnish healthcare system. By this, we can make a real impact. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Team AMRI. And now we're going to move on to the next team. And as opposed to this team that worked with MRIs, this other team worked with Konecranes, an important agent in the global overhead crane industry. And they also work together to increase safety and efficiency to a healthy operator by bringing together technology, data, occupational safety, and health with a human-centered solution. So the floor is yours.
Thank you, Lucia, and hi all. My name is Juho, and I'm going to talk about the crane industry. Imagine a car, a typical one that weighs approx 3 tons. Now I want you to multiply that amount 16 times. That is the weight of a block of steel that an operator moves around with the crane. Just like driving a car, one must be alert and focused when operating a crane. The risks aren't just the heavy loads, but also the demanding and sometimes loud environment. In the crane business, it's not just about getting from place A to B, but also doing it safely for the operators and others' sake. Konecranes is the leading crane manufacturer in the world, and among manufacturing the best cranes, they want to make sure that every worker returns home safely, every day. Yet, in real life, accidents still happen. Based on the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, dozens of crane injuries happen yearly, some of them even leading to fatalities. The cause of the accident is not in the cranes, but they happen due to simple human mistakes. Over 70% of the accidents happen during routine operations. Think about that. This is something we want to change. But first, we needed to understand the operator in action. In the past 6 months, our team has taken a deep dive into the different ways health data could transform day-to-day operations. What does the health data tell about the operator's alertness? And how might we prevent accidents from happening? We learned that it's not just about the stress factors, but also the lack of focus. To operate safely and effectively, the sweet spot would be here in the middle. And this is something we can measure. So, how does the next innovation shaping the industry look like? We believe that in the future, the crane and the operator unite. Konecranes will lead the change by making the cranes even smarter and allowing the operator and the crane to function in sync. To get there, we created a roadmap for Konecranes. From data-fueled training to supporting the daily operations, the crane could read the operator's reactions, changes in the vitals, and environment. Through this, the crane can alert the operator in case there are changes in conditions. Most importantly, the crane always has the operator's back so that everyone gets home safely. On behalf of the whole team, thank you.
Thank you very much, Team Konecranes. That was a very good presentation. So now we're going to move on to the Group 4 Q&A session, where you can ask questions to the team, either Konecranes or to the team AMRI. So whoever wants to ask a question, you can just raise your hand or open your mic. Yes, Kirsti.
Yeah, for Team Konecranes, how did these operators, what kind of response you got from them about this idea of measuring tech?
Yes, it was really interesting, and we were because health data is, of course, it's a very sensitive and private thing. So we talked about it with the operators, and they were actually quite excited about it. So they didn't feel that, especially as we gave some examples how the service would work, that they didn't feel that it would be intimidating or yeah, somehow feel bad. So they were really excited and yeah, looking forward to this.
Yes, Francesca.
Yes, I have a question for Team AMRI. So how are you planning to reach a COPD patient in time before it gets severe?
Yeah, thank you, Francesca. So the thing is that most people with really minor symptoms at the early stage of COPD, which is just like coughing or shortness of breath, wouldn't go to a hospital with that. So they're going to their general doctor, where usually these high imaging techniques are not available. So we have these two components which we need, which is the AMRI being available where the patient is actually going to, and also that it doesn't cause harm. So we cannot have any radiation, because otherwise you wouldn't image such a person with such minor symptoms at that stage. So having these two components, we can actually diagnose early. And additionally, by not having radiation, we can also do follow-up visits. And this was before not possible because of the cancer risk. And now the doctor can then track the symptoms and see the progress of the disease and maybe adapt medication if it's needed. So if we have these components, we can theoretically not stop COPD from even becoming severe in any patient from now on.
Okay, do I see any other questions? The thing is that I don't see.
I don't see either.
Yeah, there are no other questions, right? Okay, well, since there are no other questions, now I'm going to give you some time to stretch, to go for a coffee or whatever you want to do. And I'm going to give you approximately 30 minutes. We're coming back at 3:40 with the last but not least group of presentations, and they're going to be speaking about technology of the future. So take a rest, stretch, and see you 3:40. Hello, hello. I hope everyone is back. I hope you had like a relaxing break. You had some fun. You were able to stretch, to drink some coffee. But now we're going to head up to the last group of presentations. And guys, this is going to be amazing. So, you know, as I mentioned to you before, understanding our future is crucial in order to map out the priorities that we have for today. So this is why these two last teams are focused on what the future of technology might bring to us. And to help the city of Espoo to reach its 2030 carbon neutral goals, Kone challenged the team Kone e-mobility to reimagine new sustainable futures and electric solutions for shared mobility within the residents of the city of Espoo. So, guys, the floor is yours.
When you think of a city, what comes to your mind? Perhaps constant noise, people rushing, or vehicles packed in small areas. Just consider how much space these vehicles take while only a fraction of the time they are being used. Populations around the world are increasing, and therefore, so are mobility needs. Globally, the transportation sector makes up approximately 1/5 of toxic carbon emissions. And with each new vehicle, this percentage will rise. We believe there is a future where cities have cleaner air, more green spaces to roam, and safe places for kids once dedicated to parking garages and roads. Where you don't worry about buying the best car for your family, a new bike every few years, or dealing with costly maintenance. So together with Kone, a leader in people flow, we were asked to design for a more sustainable future, where these emissions could be cut by the increase of electric and shared transportation solutions among the residents of Espoo. So to achieve this, we see the needs of changing the way we imagine vehicle ownership from owning a vehicle to sharing a vehicle. To understand how we could change the strict mindset, we studied the needs and habits of residents. We conducted surveys, field research, expert interviews, and co-design workshops. We discovered that people still feel like they need to have access to a car in Finland. They need a way to know and to trust other people using the same vehicles. Convenience and flexibility play a major role in the longevity of a shared system. Therefore, residents need a way to ensure the availability of any shared EVs in their communities. And they should be able to treat the vehicles as their own when traveling, knowing that it is safe to do so on a community level. We propose a solution with Kone that will provide an EV electric vehicle management system, which provides housing cooperatives, Kone customers, with a more cohesive platform to share EVs among their tenants. For example, this system has the potential to be utilized by residents in over 12,000 apartments in the growing district of Leppävaara. And once established, will be able to expand and develop within and outside the city of Espoo. So it will include all forms of EVs, from cars to boats to bikes and more, allowing housing cooperatives to own their own EVs, lease vehicles from companies like Omego, and let their residents share their privately owned vehicles in return for free charging and maintenance checks. This more centralized and comprehensive system will allow for easier EV access from the comfort of residents' own buildings via a dashboard and through an application on their smartphone. Residents in apartment buildings will feel confident in using the shared EVs by seeing and knowing who they are sharing them with, and being able to easily reserve their own EVs for a few hours to pick up something from IKEA, a weekend trip out of Espoo, and more. As this platform grows, new and older residents will not be as dependent on buying a new car that has expensive maintenance and parking fees. So more space in the community will be open for parks, playgrounds, and recreational activities. And more people will be able to do what they want, when they want. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Team eMobility. It was a great presentation. I loved your visuals. So last, but obviously not least, we have our final team, the Watson Center Next Level. It is a global collaboration between Aalto University, Karlsruhe University of Technology, and part of the Sugar Network of Design Innovation. Their challenge was to, as a global team, to reinvent the IBM Watson Client Experience Center in Munich, Germany. So the floor is your team.
How can we deliver the best experience for our clients? This is a question asked by leading companies more frequently now than ever. For many businesses, delivering a great experience is still a challenge, and the Watson Center is no exception. The Watson Center is IBM's client center in Munich, whose current client experience is not living up to its full potential. This is an issue since, according to statistics, half of the clients would switch to a competitor after just one bad experience. From this arose our challenge. How can we create the best Watson Center experience? By meeting the continuously changing needs of their diverse clients. To tackle this, we first gathered insights about the clients. A wide client base means a broad range of needs. Designing experiences to meet all those needs are demanding, and in Watson Center case demanded a system-level change. And to address that change, the process of experience creation needs to be transformed. An inside-out approach that engages all employees to work together on a shared vision. This required an increased awareness of the client's emotions and collaborative experience design. We developed and facilitated a workshop for the Watson Center employees in which they were able to discuss and agree on experience goals and on how to achieve them. By combining the results from our successful workshop and other insights, we form the Watson Experience Toolbox. This toolbox will help unleash the full potential of the client experience of the Watson Center. This toolbox consists of 3 elements that the IBMers can apply in their work to continue to develop the experience. The first element consists of 8 experience goals co-created with the IBMers that describe what feeling should be provoked in the client during the experience. They also establish a common understanding and a shared vision within the organization. The second element, the experience strategy map, is a communication and planning tool that shows opportunities for cross-team collaboration and both team and organization level action plans. Third element, instructions for the participatory methodology for experience design that are team developed and validated. These instructions equip the IBMers to continue to design the experience in a human-centered way and to adjust the goals and strategy if needed. We know that the toolbox will help the Watson Center to better attract and retain clients by creating meaningful experiences together. Come and hear more about our toolbox in our booth later on. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Watson IBM team. And now we're going to move on to the Q&A session for these 2 last teams. So if you have any question, again, please raise your hand or just unmute yourself. Any questions? I can see a lot of comments. That's very lovely.
I can ask question to Kone e-mobility. First, great work and very interesting project. And my question is that when you mentioned the IV, were you mainly referring to electric cars?
No, we weren't. We were referring to all kinds of electric vehicles. So bikes, e-scooters, even electric boats, because that's actually a big market that's not tapped here yet. A lot of people sail, a lot of people use boats here. But we also wanted to increase the accessibility of these electric vehicles because the whole point is to have less vehicles on the road. So having them electric and shared and different forms of transportation.
Okay, thanks.
Any other question from our lovely audience?
I can ask from the team. Yes. What, not about the concept in itself, but what was the most challenging, in your opinion, in your project from the Kone mobility team?
Well, maybe tackling the complexity of the issue, making the transportation more sustainable. We all know that we need to transfer to electricity more, but then also taking into account how to change people's perspective to going away from the traditional cars running on petrol, and kind of there's so many deep behavioral changes that need to be done. So maybe then finding the right scope where we should start, that maybe was at least at first the most challenging part, finding that, right problem to tackle.
Yeah, and also this is like future thinking too, because we don't know what else will change in 10, 20, 30 years. So that's also the difficult part, that you're still left in uncertainty. So that's why we tackled like the accessibility and convenience of getting it to residents in this concept.
Thanks.
I have a question. Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, we will hear you.
Yeah, can we ask the Watson Center experience? Are they also responding?
Yeah, they're also responding.
Give it a go.
All right, so I wanted to ask them because I'm very interested with their best experience for clients. Which types of industries do they particularly work in, and what has been the experience, especially do they work with established companies or startups? Because this is something very interesting for me, particularly in entrepreneurship.
Thank you. That's a really good question. That actually has been a big part of our project as well. So Watson Center is IBM's client center in Munich, and IBM, of course, is a massive international global organization having clients from all sizes, from all locations. But in Watson Center in Germany, a big majority of the clients are car manufacturers. It goes into investment banking and insurance banking. So there's a huge range of clients that comes to the Watson Center. And actually also then there's the range of big established companies into startups and initiatives. So the Watson Center serves a really vast, broad range of clients that are interested to work with IBM and IBM's technologies. So it's kind of companies of all shapes and sizes and in different kind of stages of digitalization. So that's also something that we found out, that this trend of digitalization is increasing. And that means more and more companies are looking for technology solutions, and Watson Center is going to be the first touch point for many of these companies in this journey of digitalization. So to answer your question, companies of all shapes and sizes from all possible industries.
Thank you very much. That's a good answer. I hope you work in Africa as well. Do you have African clients?
Yes, and the Watson Center actually is the flagship customer center for the European and African kind of market area. So the Watson Center kind of serves also the African economy as well, and the kind of business in Africa. But I don't think there is currently a client center in Africa anywhere, maybe hopefully soon. But yeah, the Watson Center serves also the African business.
Yeah, thank you very much. I really like what you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, I see we have a question in the chat, but I cannot read the question, so I don't know for who it is.
It's for e-mobility.
I think it's for e-mobility.
Well, I can help here out. For e-mobility, wouldn't the resident sharing be limiting for the optimizing usage? That was the kind of question.
Oh yeah. So the question is, wouldn't the resident sharing be limited for optimizing usage? Well, like, to be honest, like we don't have the exact answer, yes, because in order to answer this question, we need to launch the product and collect all the necessary data to see like if there should be a limit for the uses. Yeah, but like that's like an interesting idea that we will look into more after the presentation.
Also, there's the, because it's a future scenario and ours was mostly a user research before building this concept, what it could be is about scalability. So it depends on how much there's a need for these vehicles, and then more vehicles will be allocated for the residents.
So, Karo, you posed the questions and you had an example of some thoughts. Maybe you can actually just, reiterate or kind of say about the example. the question is clear. The example you gave is, I think, quite intriguing. It was Carol.
Okay, yeah, sure. I'll get you your question. Could you repeat what you just said?
You gave an example, and at least in
Yeah.
the kind of, the chat. So you gave an example. Would you like to elaborate on that, or is it useful, or it's already addressed?
I'm not sure. Maybe this is going too deep into it, but if we think about having assets like vehicles, the main thing that drives the usage is that it's available on a big scale. And I'm just questioning whether it's it's if it's a good solution to make a concept based on the fact that you know everybody who you share the vehicle with. That's just my question. Like if it's based on that you need to know everybody who you're sharing with, then it becomes local, and then we have these problems with weekend usages or whole day usage. Maybe that's my question. But then again, this concept would work, for example, if you're just going to the store or something like shorter trips.
Well, again, I want to reiterate that this was mostly user research. It is a concept that won't be initiated until much later. So it's not something that will be initiated within the year. But the housing cooperatives can own the amount of e-vehicles. But then as it grows within the residencies, then you can also have other companies like Omego that lends out. Like if you need more e-vehicles, these companies can lend out to this platform, to this system. Because one of the things that we found in our user research is that a lot of these places that already have e-cars are underutilized because people don't have the right kind of access or know how to use it. So our concept is increasing that availability and that knowledge. And then it will start to grow and those other factors will come along. But again, this is a very new concept that will not be initiated within the year. So it's for a future scenario.
Yes, thank you. That's the answer to my question, because that was kind of where I was going, like what's missing out in my thought gap. Yeah, thanks.
Just one other question, or in addition to that, why would it not be done within a year? And why would it be 5, 10, 15, 20 years ahead? Like tomorrow is another day. And so what would stop it from being implemented tomorrow? Or I don't mean tomorrow literally, but like soon.
Well, I mean, because that was not our aim of the project. There would need to be more user testing and more user research to see how this would be implemented and which buildings would take it on. Kone, being a leader in people flow, have elevators and customers everywhere throughout Espoo. So it will be easier for them, but it will take time. It will take time to make that trust and to build up the systems and to add the kiosks, and electric charging stations need to be implemented. So there will be a lot of things that are involved with the housing cooperatives. And some housing cooperatives already have it, but there's just more construction to be done.
1 year, 3 years, 2 years, 5 years. The time frame, I think, is important to kind of understand. It's so interesting what your team has investigated and I've been asked to explore. But why put off the future when it can happen today?
Yeah, the goal is 2030 for carbon neutrality in Espoo.
2030 is like, I probably won't be living by then. And so I don't really care then. But the sooner the better. And is it a technology limit, social adaptation level, competitive? What's the kind of reasoning for why it's 2030, even though it sounds very future? And 2030 is very soon, of course. But why not 2025?
Well, that's not up to us, but we hope.
It is up to you to suggest that it could be done sooner than later. So what's the limiting factor for why it's 2030, which is quite far away relatively, compared to the immediacy of mobility and the things that you've actually investigated. This is not a criticism, this is only just a comment on the future. 2050 sounds great. Like, why? 2049 is 1 year earlier, 2000, so that was my point. So it was no criticism for your team, but it's just in general, when you talk about the future, it doesn't have to be out there, it can be in here to be there. I'll stop talking now.
No, it's okay. It's complex, so it has to be broken up into steps. So you're right that it should start, but it will be broken up into different steps.
Yeah, that would be really great. I think also for your project and for the company to figure out why, the temporal dimension, why it's this and why it's not that type of thing. And like I said, it's not a criticism on your team. I think your team did a really good job. I think all teams have done a really great job. So I'm very happy to have listened to all of the presentations, and they're so diverse that, I think that's what IDBM is about. So well done.
And I would like to compliment that to say, well done, everyone. We made it. We come to an end of these presentations, but congratulations. You have worked so hard. You have delivered amazing results. So let's just be proud of what we have done and continue developing amazing projects. And actually here, I just want to add something. Like, I think today's event, it's a good proof that despite all the challenges that we have had in the last month, we have extraordinarily succeeded in readapting and reconfiguring ourselves and still come up to deliver amazing solutions. And that's why the theme of metamorphosis was. So amazing job, everyone. And here, before dividing ourselves into breakout rooms for the exhibition booths, I would like to give the stage to our very own IDBM Community Manager, Apurva Ganoo. He has been working closely together with the IDBM students and faculty during the whole year. So he will be closing this year's IDBM Impact event with a couple of words. Then, after Apurva's speech, all the teams are going to be divided into breakout rooms, and that's where we will start the exhibition booth round. So during the next 30 minutes of the exhibition booth round, you are welcome to jump into any exhibition booth and ask all the questions that you have. So you can take a closer look to the concepts and just ask more about it. And okay, then after that, the official IDBM Impact event is going to come to an end. So here from my part, I want to say just thank you to all of you who have joined today. Thank you to all the students for all your amazing work. I have told you this already, but I loved each of your presentation. Also, a big shout out to all the sponsors that we had. So Werner, Lumene, Suomen Economics, Prohoc Projects, Sanoma, Coca-Cola, Live, Säästöpankki, Kone, and Transmeri. Thank you. Also, I want to say thank you to our guest speakers, Mikko Mäntylä and Noel Joyce. And lastly, but not least, thank you for the IDBM faculty and staff who worked so hard on this project and so hard in this unusual year. So thank you, everyone, and we made it. So now, Apurva, the stage is yours.
Thank you. You did a great job today. So well
thank
done.
you, Peter.
and yeah, I'll try to figure out how to get into some breakout room. But anyway, collectively, congratulations, and Lucia, again, thank you for very cleverly hosting and engaging us.
I hope you like it. But yes, Peter, basically in the bar, in the bottom, you have, I think you can select where you want to, or the breakout rooms, you can select where you can enter.
Okay, so reactions in the reaction space are...
I think you have like a bar and it is a button that says like breakout rooms.
Okay.
So, but this is actually, if you have the updated.
No, we don't have that yet.
They are going to open, no?
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, now you can go move on to Apurva.
Wait, why is yeah, I needed to share, just 1 second. I will share the full screen. And there we go. Yes. So thank you, Lucia, for wonderful hosting of this year's Impact. And for this year's closing speech, I'd like to talk about a concept called shokunin and how it applies to each and every one of you today. And so shokunin, the word comes from the Japanese apprentice or a craftsman. And it is taught that it is not simply the technical skills that are important, but it also implies an attitude and social consciousness. And there is the obligation to work to his or her best, and also for the general welfare of society. So I want you to keep these thoughts in mind. But before going forward, I want to go back in time, particularly to November 20th, 2020, to the industry project kickoff. Or if you haven't been part of this year's journey, I want you to go back even further. Like myself in 2019, we have students from before, or if you're from the client side, anytime you've embarked on a new journey or a new project. And I want you to think about these things. What were the dreams, the visions, the goals, and the expectations that you set out for yourselves? What were they looking like? Did you achieve them? And what were the expectations that you set out for yourself, your teammates, and also from your clients? And of course, now is the perfect time to look back at those. And so I would encourage all of you to take the time to reflect. And so for the students this year, there have been many things that you've achieved. You have been planning, communicating, team working, designing, ideating, prototyping, conceptualizing, negotiating. You've been visualizing, creating, organizing, but also building solutions. But perhaps what you haven't been focusing on are the times when things were frustrating or challenging or worrying, when you were excited or when things were captivating. You've been laughing together, you've been crying together, you've been jumping, you've been screaming and shouting, you've been whispering, and you've been meeting a lot. You've been discussing, finalizing, and finally pitching. And so what I would like to ask you all to think about, going back to this statement, is that you've not just been delivering results to the clients and in terms of projects, but you've been also shaping the attitudes around you, and you've been making a difference to the people around you. So I want you to think about how many lives you've empowered, how many friends you've made across this journey, how many people you've given the chance to speak up and also helped around you. So while the projects, of course, have been successful, you've also grown as individuals throughout this journey. And so just to show how much you've grown from one shokunin to another, I've asked all our mentors this year to give me a quick summary of what they thought. The first team, AMRI. The AMRI team managed through extremely rigorous and extensive research, make sense of nascent technology, and thus overcome a very challenging brief. Team AGI. One of the greatest feelings for a mentor is when the team starts to fly with their own wings. You had to build your own approach, you defended it even in times of uncertainty, and you delivered it to success. I'm so happy for you. Team ATARCA. I have truly enjoyed seeing you accept and thrive under the ambiguity of the project you were exploring. While the early morning meetings may have been tough to wake up for, the conversations we had certainly kept me awake at night in a good way, of course. IBM, you built a strong connection from start between the entire global team and demonstrated an impressive unity that reflects well in the bravery of your last-minute pivot on the solution for truly valuable outcome. Team Invalidisäätiö, I love how the live team managed to get to the core of what humanity is and not only identify practical problems for their users, but also emotional ones. Team Kone Mobility, you were the three musketeers who survived through any challenge that was thrown at them. Team Kone Robotics, I truly admire the tenacity and work ethic you've all shown in this project. You have shown yourselves to not only be talented, but also extremely dedicated. Kudos to you. Team Plan International, you did great in reaching an extremely difficult user group and navigating the challenging brief to develop a meaningful solution with true societal impact. Konecranes, conscientious, talented, and admirable are the three words I would use to describe your team. You have been simply a joy to work with, and seeing your strength in the face of adversity was commendable. Team 10, Posti, a team that always seemed to be 3 steps ahead of the others. They have been pitching their concept idea to so many stakeholders already that I'm pretty sure that they can sell pretty much anything. And Team Säästöpankki, you admirably put yourselves on the line in exploring your project topic, no matter if it meant sharing your latest beer purchases or developing your own financial know-how. Great job in doing whatever it takes to make it happen. And so impact is not only about reflection, but it is also a celebration. It is a celebration of when you were doodling, when you were supposed to be attending meetings, drinking terrible amounts of coffee while you were supposed to be working, relaxing on a Zoom call or hopping in 2 minutes after waking up, testing out new ways to collaborate, coming up with merchandise when your project still hadn't been finalized, and of course, having fun despite of the situations. And all of that has culminated to this year's impact. Everything is in a state of metamorphosis. And so impact is a celebration, and we should celebrate those who have made it happen. These are the students, the clients, the staff, faculty, sponsors, IDBM Klubi, Clarion Hotel for hosting us, the wonderful host today, Lucia, and all the guests who have joined us. You have all made a difference. And so going back to the idea of Shakunin, we are looking at that you have not only grown in technical skills, but you've shown an attitude and social consciousness. The work you've done today is, of course, very valuable to the companies and to the projects that you've created, but you've also elevated those around you. The industry projects, how we sell to clients, are designed to make a difference, and you all have made a difference. Thank you. Kiitos. Tack. But before I close, I would like you to all remember to definitely check out all the booths. And students, please show off your projects, own them, showcase them, and celebrate them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Apurva. That was really succinct and summarized. And I think it was a great idea to get a kind of projection or reaction to the different teams. That was really nice to hear. So Niina, you're going to say something. At least Niina's visible. Yeah, Niina, some.
Sorry, yes, I'm here.
Yeah.
Yes, sorry, I didn't ask your question. Hear your question.
I was just commenting, just saying Apurva and all the teams did a great job. But
Yes.
of course, before we go into the breakout rooms, then it might be nice to hear your thoughts about today's impact event, or this 2021 globally challenged event.
Yeah, I think this was amazing event. It was a super well production for the Klubi, for all the teams, and for all the faculty members. During these challenging times, we have been able to put something so amazing together. We had a wonderful atmosphere here, and lots of energy, lots of enthusiasm, And I hope this has been an enjoyable ride for everybody watching.